the roar on the burning hill. The acrid smell of smoke hung heavy in the air, a bitter reminder of the devastation that had swept through the Serengeti. For 3 days, flames had consumed everything in their pathogenic trees, lush grasslands, and countless homes of the savanna's inhabitants. What once stood as nature's testament to life's resilience was now a charred wasteland, smoldering under the unforgiving African sun. Wildlife researcher Dr. Elena Moretti wiped the sweat from her brow as she surveyed the blackened landscape from the rescue vehicle. 6 years studying predator behavior in this region hadn't prepared her for the hollowness she felt witnessing such destruction. The forest fire had finally been contained, but at what cost? The team had already documented dozens of animal casualties, with countless more unaccounted for. "We should head back to base," said Marco, her colleague and the vehicle's driver. "We've been out since dawn, and nightfall's approaching. There's nothing more we can do today." Elena nodded reluctantly, knowing he was right. The rescue team had been working tirelessly, treating injured animals and relocating those that had survived but lost their habitats. Their resources were stretched thin, their spirits even thinner. As Marco turned the Jeep around, a sound pierced through the eerie silence of the devastated landscape, a roar, powerful yet somehow different from what Elena had heard countless times before. It carried something beyond territorial assertion or hunting excitement. There was pain in it, desperation. "Wait," Elena said, placing her hand on Marco's arm. "Did you hear that?" Before he could respond, the roar came again, louder and more insistent. "It's coming from that hill." Elena pointed to a rise about half a kilometer away, one of the few elevated areas that wasn't completely blackened. "We need to check it out." Marco hesitated. "Protocol says we return before dark. We're not equipped for nighttime rescue operations." The roar echoed across the savanna once more, sending chills down Elena's spine. "That's a female lion," she said firmly, "and something's wrong. I can feel it." After a moment's deliberation, Marco sighed and turned the vehicle toward the hill. 20 minutes, then we head back, regardless." As they approached, the roaring became more frequent, almost rhythmic. Through her binoculars, Elena spotted the Sorsa lioness perched atop the hill, her golden coat marred with soot and what appeared to be burns along her flank. Even from this distance, Elena could see the animal was in poor condition. "She's injured," Elena reported, "badly from the looks of it." "Dangerous situation," Marco warned. "Injured predators are unpredictable." Elena watched as the lioness paced back and forth atop the hill, continuing her persistent roars despite obvious pain. Most curious was how she remained in one location. Injured lions typically sought shelter, hidden away from potential threats while they recovered or, tragically, awaited death. "This isn't normal behavior," Elena muttered more to herself than Marco. "She's not just injured, she's calling for something." They parked at a safe distance, and Elena stepped out with her tranquilizer gun ready. Years of fieldwork had taught her to balance compassion with caution. The lioness had spotted them, but, strangely, made no attempt to flee or appear threatening. Instead, she roared again, eyes fixed on the humans below. "I'm going to get closer," Elena decided, ignoring Marco's protests. "Something's not right here." With careful, measured steps, she advanced toward the hill. The lioness watched her approach, continuing to roar at intervals. As Elena drew nearer, she noticed something else. The ground beneath the lioness seemed to be moving slightly. Then she heard it. Faint mewling sounds nearly drowned out by the mother's powerful calls. "My God," Elena gasped, realization dawning. "Marco, bring the medical kit and call for backup. There are cubs under there." The hillside had partially collapsed during the fire, creating a small cavern. The lioness wasn't just injured and calling out in pain, she was standing guard over her trapped cubs, using the only method she had to attract help, her voice. What followed was an operation that would later be described in scientific journals and nature documentaries alike. As darkness fell, additional rescue teams arrived with spotlights, digging equipment, and veterinary supplies. The lioness whom Elena had started calling Amara, strength in Swahili, never left her post, even as the humans worked beneath her. With painstaking care, they removed debris while stabilizing the shifting earth. The mother lion seemed to understand their intentions, maintaining her vigil but allowing them to work. Her roars had diminished to watchful growls, her strength clearly waning. "She's been keeping this up for who knows how long," the head veterinarian remarked to Elena. "With those injuries, it's a miracle she's still standing." 4 hours into the operation, they reached the cub's 5 tiny bodies huddled together in the darkness. Miraculously, 3 were still alive, protected by the earth that had trapped them and guided by their mother's unceasing calls. Elena felt tears streaming down her face as she helped lift each cub to safety. The mother watched intensely, gathering her remaining strength to stand as the last of her offspring emerged from the ground. Only after all 3 surviving cubs were placed in a secure carrier did Amara finally collapse, her purpose fulfilled. The veterinary team rushed to her side, administering fluids and treating her extensive burns and injuries. "She shouldn't have been able to stand, let alone roar for hours," the vet said in amazement. "The damage to her lungs from smoke inhalation alone should have silenced her." But Elena understood. "Some bonds transcend physical limitations," she said softly, watching as they loaded the lioness onto a stretcher. "Love doesn't recognize impossibility." The weeks that followed tested both human dedication and animal resilience. At the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, Amara fought for her life with the same determination she'd shown on that hill. Her cubs, too young to survive without maternal care, required round-the-clock attention from Elena and the staff. "You know the odds?" the senior veterinarian warned Elena one evening, finding her asleep next to the lioness's enclosure. "Adult lions rarely survive such trauma, and cubs this young without their mother." Elena merely nodded, too exhausted for argument. She understood probability and had witnessed nature's harsh realities firsthand throughout her career. But something about this family's fight stirred a deeper conviction within her. Each morning, she would bring the cubs to their mother's enclosure, allowing them to nuzzle against her and receive what comfort she could offer in her weakened state. Though protocol advised against such interaction with animals destined for release, Elena insisted it was crucial for all 4 lions' recovery. "Their connection is medicine no veterinarian can provide," she argued. On the 18th day after the rescue, Elena arrived at the center to find Amara standing wobbly but upright for the first time since her collapse. The staff gathered in amazed silence as the lioness, still connected to IV fluids, made her way to where her cubs were sleeping. With gentle movements that belied her predatory nature, Amara began grooming each cub, her rough tongue carefully cleaning their fur. The smallest cub, whom Elena had privately named Mwanga, Light, awakened and tried to nurse, eliciting a rumbling purr from his mother despite what must have been considerable pain. "That," Elena whispered to her colleagues, "is why we never give up." 6 months passed. The burn scars still marked the landscape, but life had begun to reclaim the savanna. New growth pushed through the ash-covered soil, and animals cautiously returned to their former territories. In a special enclosure at the edge of the rehabilitation center, Amara and her 3 growing cubs prepared for their final medical checks before release. The family had become somewhat of a sensation, with conservation groups worldwide sharing their story and raising substantial funds for fire prevention and wildlife protection programs. Elena watched through the observation window as the cubs' boisterous juveniles played with enrichment toys while their mother supervised. Amara's burns had healed into scars that disrupted her fur pattern, creating a unique marbled effect that made her instantly recognizable. She would never regain her full strength or hunting prowess, prompting lengthy debates about whether the family should be released at all. They deserve their freedom, Elena had insisted during the final decision meeting. We've selected the perfect reserve-abundant prey, no competing prides, and minimal human interaction. Plus, the cubs have developed excellent hunting skills during our training sessions. What Elena didn't mention was her own attachment to these lion show. Amara's determination had pulled her from the professional burnout she'd been experiencing before the fire. How the cubs' recovery had restored her faith in conservation work when it had been at its lowest. On release day, Elena fought to maintain her composure as the transport cages were loaded onto trucks. Amara seemed to sense the significance of the moment, her amber eyes meeting Elena's through the bars. "You taught me more about strength than any human ever could," Elena whispered to the lioness. "Thank you for letting us help you." At the release site, a lush area spared from the fire's path, Elena stood at a safe distance as the cage doors were opened. The cubs bounded out immediately, intoxicated by the expanse of freedom before them. Amara emerged more cautiously, testing the air and surveying the landscape. Then, before disappearing into the tall grass with her family, the lioness turned back toward the humans. For a brief moment, her eyes locked with Elena's once more. She opened her powerful jaws and released a roar, not of pain or desperation this time, but one of strength and perhaps, Elena allowed herself to imagine, gratitude. Years later, long after Elena had accepted a prestigious position heading global wildlife fire response initiatives, reports would occasionally reach her about a uniquely marked lioness with 3 adult offspring, maintaining their territory at the edge of the reserve. Local guides had named them the Phoenix Pride, a nod to their rise from the ashes. When asked about her most meaningful career achievement during interviews, Elena never hesitated in her answer. "We often speak of teaching compassion to humans," she would say, "but sometimes it's the animals who teach us." On that burning hill, a mother lion showed me that compassion isn't a uniquely human trait, it's woven into the very fabric of life itself. She reminded me that when we witness suffering, our response defines not just who we are, but who we wish to become. Elena would pause here, remembering the sound that had changed the course of so many lives. That lioness could have used her remaining strength to save herself. Instead, she stood guard over her vulnerable cubs and called out until someone heard her. If that's not a lesson in selfless love and the power of voice, I don't know what is. The story of Amara and her cubs became more than a wildlife rescue anecdote. It evolved into a powerful metaphor embraced by humanitarian organizations and environmental activists alike, a reminder that in our darkest hours, the choice to call out for help, to persist when all seems lost, can echo far beyond our understanding. And somewhere in the restored savanna, a scarred lioness continues to lead her pride, unaware that her roar from atop a burning hill ignited compassion that spread even further than the flames that nearly claimed her life.